You've also said to me, and this has resonated really well, that you want to be a fosterer of innovation in hospitality. Can you talk more about that and what it looks like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to add to your point about it's all the rage. It's much more than a marketing term these days. And I think early on, that's what a lot of people were concerned about. Oh, everybody says AI, but what does that truly mean? Well, I happen to be from the school of thought that I think AI is a great thing for our space specifically. I do not think it's just going to come in and replace jobs. I think it should be a complement to what we're already doing. And let me just expand upon that. So being a proponent for technology in general, I think that AI allows team members at the hotel level to get back to the basics of what their job function is, which is to service guests, delight guests, create, a higher intent to return, drive profitability. And I always think in every single task they're doing, how can AI help that task? Not replace, not get rid of, it's how can it complement? And, I'll pick a couple of random examples, but the one I know very well is procurement. Our solution at Rico has an AI component to it where the AI agents are learning things about, product inventory, things about menus and recipes and making suggested recipes, things about shopping habits and consumer buying habits that are on the store. So these are just going to enhance the procurement experience. We have this mindset that AI is going to replace everything. I think we need to pause for a moment and think about how can we take what we know today about this technology and apply it to processes and going back to our earlier conversation, the old school approach to things, and just make them better by automating and using AI to better understand and support, SOPs and processes that are already in place. So when I say foster, it's like, I come from the approach of, I understand how the business side of the operation of hotels works. I'm always thinking, how can we make it just one bit better? And if it's AI that has to do it or some form of technology and innovation, then so be it. Because at the end of the day, we have to create a great experience for every guest that stays in the hotel or parks at a hotel or uses a hotel outlet, the spa, F&B, the rooftop bar. And if AI can make it better, then so be it. We should embrace it.
I love that approach to thinking about AI in the industry. Do you think that there's still concern about it, or are a lot of owners and operators and employees at the hotels, talking through kind of the three tiers you shared before, are they embracing it more so now?
Well, I still think that there's a little bit of apprehension from, it's both sides of the fence. There's some folks who have gung-ho, 100%, I'm all in it, I've got AI on my business card type of approach, right? Then there's the extreme on the other case, which is we don't need that. It's too convoluted, it's busy, it's crowded, there's too much going on. We're going to sit by and wait till everybody figures it out and then we'll assess. And then I think the best case example are those that are kind of like me, maybe in the middle, that are I could see the value of it and I'm already applying it in many cases. And then also I think if I sit back a little bit and watch it evolve and develop, I can sort of pick and choose what aspects of this innovation might work best for my operation or my use case, for example, and allow me to take the best one that's there, whatever that technology or that use case of AI may be.
So if you were advising, I know you sit on multiple boards of tech companies in the industry, and you give back in so much of their knowledge base to what companies who are solution providers can do. If you were talking to someone who's a new entrant in hospitality, trying to build some solution, whether they're using AI or if it's more of an ad hoc process, what would you recommend to them, and how would you tell them to pitch this to the buyers in the industry?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing you're going to find out is there's a multitude and many layers of who those buyers are. So it's really important to understand your ICP, another acronym, sorry.
I like all the acronyms.
Yeah. Which ICP ends up being your customer. Who is your buyer, right? Your ideal customer profile. I think that's important to understand that first, who you're selling to. Second thing I would say is if it's a solution, whether it's a parking technology, a procurement in my case, a back of the house communication tool, I think something that's often forgotten about, but it probably ends up being one of the most important aspects is how difficult, or in many cases, how easy can it be to implement this technology? Because one thing that I can tell you is tried and true is that people who work in hotels, they don't have a lot of free time to stop and do things like train and onboard. In fact, one of the things I've learned in this space is one of the highest resistant points is how difficult or how easy is your technology to implement at my hotel, at my company, and how quickly can it be onboarded? Do I need a PhD to understand your technology, or is it very user-friendly? Is it Amazon-like, or am I writing code? These are two very different things, right? So I think that this part is, how are you making it accessible to the end user? And the end user can be that person at the hotel. The end user might be some folks at the corporate level, right? If they're looking to access dashboards or some functionality. So being mindful of that, because having the greatest technology in the world is awesome, but if it can't be rolled out successfully or implemented well within the hotel or the company, you might as well have a terrible technology, because nobody's going to use it. The adoption and the adaptation to that technology is going to be really slow, and slow adoption is usually like the death spiral for technology, right? Because they're paying for something, they purchased it, but nobody really embraced it and adopted it, and then the next thing you know, they're canceling the service, or they're telling you, you know what, we're just not seeing the value in this technology.
It's one of the first questions we get when we're selling a hotelier is, how long will this take to implement, and who needs to be involved? And it's such a great indicator of a buying question.
It is.
But it's one of the first pieces that they say to us in the process of talking to them about how we can add ancillary revenue. So can you share a little bit more about why that's so important for a hotelier to understand when they're buying a new solution, what the implementation looks like?
Yeah, and 100%, it's a great indicator of, or perhaps even a buy signal, but there's a couple of really strong reasons why it's such a prominent and it's also a relevant question. The example I would probably use, which is more applicable to more recent years, is the whole cycle of COVID and what happened from a staffing perspective in hotels. So you had the case of most, if not many, maybe outside of Florida, Texas, hotels went to basically zero occupancy. And so if you have zero occupancy in your hotel, you certainly don't need staff. And as we all know, most staff in those hotels were either furloughed or laid off on some level. And then if you use the example of Florida, which ended up happening in a lot of states eventually after COVID, was hotels started coming back from an occupancy and demand perspective pretty quickly. And so what happened, Florida, which I knew intimately at the time, I had a portfolio within the state, you had hotels going from basically 0 to 60 overnight, 0 to 60 miles an hour, or 0 to 100% occupancy. And you had little to no staff in those hotels. You typically had like a GM who was there the whole time, maybe wasn't even furloughed, was kind of holding down fort, maybe a couple of managers and a housekeeper or two. And that was it. And you coupled that with the fact that a lot of people chose not to work because they were getting incentives and other means of income. And so there was a shortage of staff. You had hotels grossly understaffed, and you had an influx of people spending COVID incentive dollars and everything else coming into these hotels. And what happened? Owners and management companies alike were like, hey, we can run a full hotel with 4 staff members. Or, in the case of a larger hotel, maybe when you had 100 to 200 staff members, they pulled it off with 25 or 30 staff members. And so this cycle went on for quite a bit. I'm talking a couple of years. You had hotels running big occupancy numbers, making more money from a profitability perspective than they ever had, and they were running bare bones staffing. Well, now fast forward to today, 4.5, almost 5 years post that period, you have many hotels who still have not got back to that staffing level. You have hotels that maybe at one point ran 100 team members, but are now running those same levels of occupancy, but maybe have 75. Why? Well, because we showed we could run the hotel at pretty good efficiency levels with a much less staffing. And also it did give management companies, operators the perspective of, hey, maybe we need to reassess. Maybe we had a little bit of excess fat, if you will, on the staffing side. And so now put the hat back on of being that person working at the hotel, and your job role has become, I'm wearing 50 other hats because that's what I did during COVID. And maybe during COVID I had 50 jobs and now it's only 25. But what we're getting at is they have less time to commit to other things like training, in this case, onboarding and implementing a new technology. So they're very cognizant and also very leery of committing to time to onboard a new product, new solution, whatever it might be. And that's why that question comes up. Hey, how much time am I really going to need to allocate for myself and my team to onboard your technology? So it's a very pertinent and important question.
If you're a solution provider to the industry and you have that split second of attention from a hotelier, whether that be someone that's on the management front on sites, whether it's someone that's in the corporate front, and you're talking them through why they should use your solution to whether it's decrease costs or increase revenue, something that affects the bottom line of the business, that aligns with all the incentives from owners on down. So you need to be able to explain to them very succinctly and very urgently why you're not going to create a larger burden on top of them during that moment, during onboarding, to get that value. And so it's really making sure that the ramp up period is smooth. And so as a solution provider, if you can go in and just really help them understand the simplicity of onboarding and the quick speed to, in technology you might call it like a CAC payback, a customer acquisition cost payback. If that CAC payback period for the hotel is quick on your solution, there should be almost no reason to have that be a hindrance.
There should be, and that is exactly, there should be zero hindrance. They also want to know that if we do this and get it done quickly, what is the likelihood that my team members that we're basically giving this technology to are actually going to adopt this as the new solution? And the way we can do that right is make it simple for them, have a great user experience. If it's a technology or a software, make sure the user interface is very friendly. Again, we don't want to turn people off by building something that requires them to have a basic understanding of code. No, we want a user interface that creates a great user experience, and that could be through an app, through a platform, whatever it might be. So all these other parts are equally as important, as well as that seamless, friendly onboarding implementation cycle or period.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I hope that anyone that's watching this and listening to you speak hears the importance of user experience design and lowering the barrier of entry. And it's also where AI can really have a massive role of creating consistency across a rollout to lower the cost that is education of the users and increase the speed to success.